Hey y'all, it's Vanessa with Farm Girl Gardens and Market, and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I'm an edible garden coach and permaculture enthusiast in North Central Texas, and I am taking you along with me on my personal farm project, which is recovering a 2-acre small homestead that really has needed some love. So one of the things that I don't get to share much is what I call my homestead garden, or like what would be maybe an individual family of 4 size garden. So this is about, I always forget, I think it's about 20 by 15. It's not huge. If you have a small suburban backyard, this garden would fit in it. I do have it designed as a permaculture system, so it is adjacent to my chicken coop where we do watershed, have the chickens, and the compost systems behind it. Man, it's always sunny, and I'm sorry that messes things up. But if you can see, just to give you an overview, chickens and their enclosed run are behind it. One of our chicken run compost systems is right here. All of the green waste and spent plants that I don't put elsewhere, I'm putting here for the chickens to manage and peck at. And then in front of it is the garden. Okay, so now I was injured really significantly, and so I haven't been out here. It's been at least since August 16th that I have not been out here. And one of the things I've really wanted to do on this channel is do kind of what I'm gonna call, I don't know, farm girl chats. They're really more motivational, maybe even a touch spiritual. I think that when you're growing, you are growing not just food, you're growing yourself during your garden journey. You're learning personal development skills. You're also learning things like patience, perseverance, and grit. Tenacity is a huge one. And so those are all things that I've personally learned during my journey, and then have watched my clients, my coaching clients, flourish in their journeys as well. And so I wanted to share a little bit more of that heart and intention here. And we are all going through stuff, right? It's 2020, so like, world's just crazy. Let me get out of the sun. Come on into my garden, y'all. The world's just crazy right now, and a lot of us are going through things. And I myself am in a season where I don't get to do what I want when I want to, and that's frustrating to me. I did not get to take care of this garden. Sorry, I walked through a spider web. So I guess, yeah, it'll be 2 months next week. I haven't touched it. And I was feeling really defeated about that. Like, oh my gosh, I'm a garden coach and I can't even show off my gardens because they look horrible. And yet I had a friend over the other day who saw this and was like, oh my gosh, you've got salad growing, you've got tomatoes growing. Like, how are you doing this with 3 kids and injuries and a baby? And the truth is because I designed this as a permaculture system, it was successful despite my best efforts to kill it by not being out here and doing anything with it. And so I do want to share those growing methods because they're helpful, but I also want to kind of share the concept. I'm sure a lot of you have heard this. It's not my quote, so don't quote me. But when you're going through a hard spot, can you consider that perhaps 2020 or life is not happening to you, but for you? And if you have kind of that concept of, okay, let me frame shift and let me have a perspective of whatever this ish is that we're going through personally, professionally, whatever, that it's not being inflicted upon us. It's actually, and I'm Christian, so this is my take on it. It's actually highly organized chaos that is orchestrated by a God who is moving things in the heavenly places and on earth for your good. And if we can think about things that way, not only does that, one, help remove some of the existential dread or the anxiety that comes along with having so many unknowns, because when you have a spirit of gratitude, it's really difficult to have anxiety and gratitude exist in the same place. And so having that frame shift of, okay, all of these things, while they are chaotic and horrible, they're actually benefiting me somehow. And I don't think there's a better example than in the garden. So I want to hopefully not make you dizzy or nauseous, but I want to show you this guy. Okay, so like, y'all haven't touched this garden in almost 2 months. That's almost indecent, hold on. And so this is arugula that has self-seeded itself because I never had time to take the original parent plant out. And so do you see all these seed pods on here? Well, they got left here. And since they got left here, all of their seeds fell to the ground and grew itself, sprouted. And so that is a permaculture practice, actually, that if you leave your spent lettuce, not only let it go to flower and let it go to seeds so that you can either collect seeds and save it and be sustainable, but that you're providing end of season pollen sources for bees and local pollinators. But that eventually it will actually create a self-seeding, or what sometimes is called an autopilot garden. Another thing I want to show you, and this is actually funny because earlier in the summer when I was working out here more, I had this beautiful kale plant in a different garden, right? Gorgeous. And it was taking a lot of my time because it was in full sun, and it was, you know, you really shouldn't be able to grow kale in full sun in Texas when it's like 103 degrees out, right? Well, the second that I couldn't do all the things for it, fried up and died, right? Meanwhile, this garden that I have ignored because bunnies got to it, and I couldn't mend all of the gaps in the fencing. And so I was just like, screw that kale, it's gonna have to survive or die, right? Look at this red leaf Russian kale. Do you see this? He's really super happy and beautiful. And behind him, I've got a Lactino kale. I always call this dinosaur kale. That's actually one of the common names for it. And the reason it's called dinosaur kale is because it has this really beautiful, almost like leathery dinosaur skin. But do you see this? And look, the bunny sure did eat every single bit, but now it has outgrown the bunny's height and ability to continue to destroy it. And so we also have, I'm just gonna show like an overview, right? We've got these yellow pear tomatoes, fully ignored, didn't take the suckers off, didn't even water this space. This space does not have irrigation. And I'm going to talk to you about why it was able to survive. And then another funny thing came out here, and there are potatoes growing. And I was so sad that I couldn't get potatoes in. Didn't have time to make my own seed potatoes, didn't have time to source them, didn't have money to order them. And I guess I missed harvesting some this spring because whatever little babies were left in the ground have now formed their own new growth. And so there's actually potatoes that are now autopilot growing. And then behind me, same thing, y'all. I've got peppers and a whole bunch of weeds. So let me try and keep this video quick because I know y'all enjoy that. What have I learned through this process of a frame shift of this happened to me, now I can't get out here and work and weed? Well, yeah, you know what? These weeds did take over, but guess what they also acted as? Cover crop. They were protecting my soil, and they were helping to save water sustainability in this grow space. That's why these plants survived. Even though nutritionally they did suffer a little bit, because I originally put so much good biomass in here and installed this as a permaculture garden, the soil could handle it. My personal plants that I intended to grow, like the peppers, they were not hurt by it. And the weeds, even though it looks unsightly and even though it bothers my type A soul, these weeds actually served a purpose in this season. So I am going to pull them out. I'm going to refresh this and make it look pretty like I want it to, but that simple framework shift of the weeds happened to me because something outside of my control kept me from doing what I wanted to do here. Now I look at it as these weeds happened for me, because when I couldn't get out here, God in His glory and mercy looked at this garden space and said, weeds, I'm going to allow you to grow to cover this soil, and in covering it, I'm going to protect it. And sometimes in our lives, we feel like we're being buried, right? Like, could there be any more things that are getting piled on us? But what if you're not being buried? What if you're being covered? And what if in that covering, you are actually experiencing rest and peace and protection? If you focus on the it happened to me and I'm victimized by it, you will never understand the gratitude and the grace that actually happened when sometimes the world or God or the giant spaghetti monster, whatever you want to call it, is actually doing something for you. And same thing with this beautiful kale that I now, how would we do this? there we go. This beautiful kale. Vanna White would not be impressed with me. This beautiful kale that I now have, right? Like, I finally get to juice again. The bunnies were destroying this kale, and I came out here with a spirit of defeat. This is happening to me. I can't mend the fences. I can't get the bunnies out. And that beautiful kale plant that I worked so hard over summer to keep alive and keep beautiful so I could show it off to the good people of Facebook and YouTube, guess what happened? The second adversity hit, bam, it's gone, it's dead, it's toast. There isn't even a smatter of kale out in that garden anymore. This kale that got ignored, it grew grit. It had to learn it's gonna have to grow fast if it's gonna outpace these bunnies. It had to survive completely not being watered with the help of those weeds that created that ground covering for it. But now when this kale eventually does go to seed, you better believe those kale seeds are going to be the most rugged seeds because it has the genetic legacy of this parent plant that survived so much. And so, especially in our parenting journey, right, as we are moms right now going through COVID craziness, which for a lot of us that looks like we can't work the way that we used to. Now we're homeschooling. If we wanted to, it's much harder. If we didn't want to, man, that's difficult. And you know, a lot of us are in a season where we've lost financial support, or we don't have the same stability that we used to have. And so if we think of this kale plant and we say to ourselves, well, the kale plant that was in the market garden that got all of the attention and had all of the support, the second that support went away, it died, it withered on the vine. This kale never had the support, and so it had to learn to adapt. It had to learn to grow grit, and because of that, it is a much more successful plant. And because of that, its children, or its seedlings, will be much more successful and more tuned for this environment, such like our children will. We think that they're losing out because maybe we can't do the things that we used to do for them. Spend time and intention with them. The stuff fades, guys. The toys, the plastic, the commercial consumables, they're gonna forget about it in a second. And if your kids are like mine, they'll bug you for months to get it, and then they'll play with the box. So just understand that in the garden, we're always learning, adapting, and developing. And I just hope that that encourages you, because it sure did encourage me. I came out here with a spirit of defeat, and I'm walking away with a spirit of victory, because my garden survived because I was intentional with it in setting the foundation of it, so that when I couldn't be out here and work it, those good foundations, that good solid footing, is what ultimately resulted in it being able to flourish without the support that I wanted to give it. And so whether that applies to you in your personal journey, I hope that you are taking time to invest and sow into yourself so that you have a good foundation. Whether it applies to your children, I hope that you're investing in them. They don't need stuff, they need you. They want your heart, your time, your intention. And if it applies to the garden, you know what? You always get opportunities to grow. And I tell a lot of clients that say, oh, I killed it. This is my second round or third round killing the thing. I say, you know what? You're not actually killing the thing. Perhaps you are creating biomass and compost to be able to grow something new in a next season. The frame shift, the way that we perceive our world, dictates our reality. So are you going to walk away with a spirit of anxiety, or are you going to walk away with a spirit of victory? I hope that you choose the spirit of victory, because you are victorious in your own life, because the only race that you're actually running is the one with yourself. And that might be cliche, it might be available stitched on a pillow on Etsy somewhere, but it's true. And so I just wanted to share that with you. I'm gonna get out here and start working as much as I can. And when I need to stop, I'm gonna stop, because it's also okay for you to grow you. And sometimes that looks like having a fallow season or a period of rest. All of those things have a season and a time in life. And I just hope that you take the opportunity to enjoy it. Even if it's hard, enjoy it, because this is your present and it's the only guarantee you have. Until next time, bye y'all.